please welcome Tom Schatz.
Thank you, Peter, and I do want to thank Senator Lankford and his staff in their absence for putting together such a wonderful publication. It's always good to have examples like this to open up larger issues related to what are really systemic failures and gross mismanagement inside the federal government. The Senator mentioned something that reminded me of a question that President Reagan asked Peter Grace when he was establishing the Grace Commission. President Reagan said that when he was governor of California, he noticed a lot of federal offices throughout the state. And he asked Peter Grace, the 160 senior corporate executives, the 2,000 volunteers, to find out how many people in California worked for the federal government. Well, they spent a year and a half going through every federal agency, putting together a comprehensive report known as the Grace Commission Report. They never got an answer to that question. So this Taxpayer Bill of Rights, the idea that agencies should simply list what they're doing and what's going on would make it a lot easier for people to know. We can, as Senator Lankford said, find out everything else about everything except those kinds of questions. In Senator Lankford's report, and he mentioned this, $142.7 billion in Medicaid improper payments since 2009. Well, those payments actually went up by 50% between 2012 and 2015, and we certainly agree that there should be greater program integrity and the whole system really needs to be overhauled. But Medicaid is only the second largest source of improper payments. Medicare is number one. And since 2010, improper payments across the federal government totaled nearly $600 billion. 90% of them were overpayments. In fiscal year 2015, 75% of the improper payments came from three agencies: the Department of Health and Human Services, the Social Security Administration, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. Senator Lankford already mentioned the $80 billion on improper payments from 18 programs at USDA, but what he didn't mention is that the school breakfast program has an improper payment rate of 22.95%. That's almost a quarter of the payments being made improperly. And there are many existing remedies for improper payments. The House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform reported and made a report on October 16, 2016, and said that agencies should do more to ensure the accuracy of their data, act on the recommendations made by their inspectors general. There is a Do Not Pay Business Center at the Department of Treasury, which is supposed to catch improper payments before they are made, and they need to do more and they need to be expanded, and OMB needs to improve its government-wide reporting on improper payments. Now, the Trump administration should make it very clear that these unimplemented recommendations should be done as soon as possible to recover not only the money that has been overpaid, but to prevent more money from going out the door and not being paid back. Senator Lankford's report also exposes numerous examples of the government's technological ineptitude. More than $55 billion, or 68% of the $80 billion spent annually on information technology, goes to support legacy systems, some of which are more than 50 years old. It's not anything any of us have really ever seen, let alone could use, and probably wouldn't even fit in this room. The Department of Defense still uses 8-inch floppy disks to run a computer system that controls nuclear weapons. The Treasury Department uses a 1960s computer code to catalog taxpayers. The Office of Management and Budget processes federal retirement benefits on paper and has not been able to use an electronic system despite 30 years of trying to do so. The Department of Homeland Security was created from 22 different agencies, which had 22 different human resources programs, and they are still not working together. $180 million spent since 2005, and little progress has been made. The Government Accountability Office since 2011 has made more than 800 recommendations for agencies to update their technology. Only 32% of them had been implemented by the end of October 2015. Now, given the billions of dollars wasted on failed IT projects, fixing these problems as soon as possible should be a high priority for the incoming Trump administration. Now, Senator Lankford talked about overlapping and duplicative programs, and he has certainly talked about this in various committees, and some of those examples appear in federal fumbles. The federal government, he already mentioned the mental illness program, so I won't mention those again, but I will mention the IRS has 9 separate overlapping programs that are intended to prevent tax fraud, which is one of the reasons why hundreds of billions of dollars is not collected from taxpayers every year. The Department of Defense operates 2 healthcare plans at a cost of more than $1 billion annually that accomplish exactly the same purpose. Since 2011, GAO has made 636 recommendations in these annual reports on duplication and overlap. The Congress and the executive branch have achieved $56 billion in savings over the past 5 years, but 41% of all of the recommendations have not been acted upon at all, and only 13% of the recommendations from 2015 have been addressed. This, again, is easy for the Trump administration to do. Act on the recommendations as soon as possible if they require executive action, and keep pushing Congress to act on those that they need to implement. And one of the more egregious examples of wasteful spending and federal fumbles is the Delta Regional Authority. It was created in 2000 to help and do exactly what it sounds like, help create jobs and improve economic development down in the Mississippi Delta states. But Congress has earmarked more than $30 million for this project, for this authority, since 2003, including more than $10 million in the current fiscal year. Again, something that should not be done, should be relatively easy, and I certainly appreciate Senator Langford's comments on earmarks, because President-elect Trump should make it very clear that he will not sign a single bill with a single earmark. President Obama made that same pledge in 2011. And even though Citizens Against Government Waste continues to find earmarks in the appropriations bills, even under our definition, there's far less than there used to be. The President-elect has made the following comments, among others, about government spending. I will ask that savings be accomplished through common sense reforms that eliminate government waste and budget gimmicks and that project hard-earned benefits for America. Maybe Jason wrote that, but that's what he said. He also said we are going to ask every department head in government to provide a list of wasteful spending projects that we can eliminate in my first 100 days. The politicians have talked about it, and I'm going to do it. A good place to start would be federal fumbles, CAGW's prime cuts, the Congressional Pig Book, recommendations from Cato, Heritage, and many, many others. Prime cuts alone make 618 recommendations that would save $644.1 billion in 1 year and $2.6 trillion over 5 years. The report addresses every area of government spending, including programs like the Market Access Program, which spends $200 million a year to help agricultural producers promote U.S. products overseas. This is a prime example of corporate welfare. These companies could well afford to do this on their own. Prime cuts also includes long-standing recommendations to eliminate programs like the sugar, dairy, and peanut programs, replace the $1 bill with the $1 coin, and increase the use of software asset management tools, because many agencies either overuse or underuse the software licenses that they receive. The number and scope of all of these recommendations is more than sufficient to put a large dent in the waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in the federal government. And let me just reiterate the word mismanagement, because it doesn't matter if there's a deficit or if there's a surplus. No one likes anybody mismanaging their money. If your financial advisor mismanages your money, you find somewhere else. Taxpayers really don't have a choice, but they should be getting better management of their hard-earned money here in Washington, D.C. The Trump administration can draw from these sources to eliminate waste not only in the first 100 days, but throughout the entire term of the president-elect. Thank you very much for your time.